Looking at our world from a theological perspective. This is the Theology Central Podcast, making theology central.
Welcome, everyone. It is Saturday, July the 24th. For some reason, I almost said that it's June. I'm going back in time. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. It's Saturday, July the 24th, 2021. It is currently 12:21 p.m. Central Time, and I'm coming to you live from the sanctuary of Victory Baptist Church, located right here in Ovalo, Texas. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, if you're listening to us live, hit the little chat icon there on the Spreaker app. Feel free to offer your thoughts, your perspective, or just say hello. If you're not listening to us live and you would like to know how to listen to us live, it's very simple. Download the Spreaker app. That's not speaker. That's Spreaker, S-P-R-E-A-K-E-R. Spreaker. The app is free. It's available on Android devices, Apple devices. If you have any problems or have any questions or need any assistance, email me at newsif@yahoo.com. newsif@yahoo.com. Once you have downloaded the Spreaker app, you'll want to do a search for the VBC podcast, Theology Central. Those are the two major podcasts. We have another one that I'm still trying to figure out what to do. We'll talk about that some other time. Download the app, listen to us live, and welcome. Thank you for tuning in. And, well, I hope this is going to go well. I am very concerned that this is not going to go very well. I have my doubts here about this episode. I know that's not the way you're supposed to. You're supposed to start and give everyone that hook, right? You got to give them that reason to keep listening, or they'll stop listening after 3 minutes. But you know what? I don't follow all of those rules. You either want to listen or you don't want to listen. I want to produce something that hopefully is beneficial and helpful, but I don't want to try to play every little manipulative game and use every manipulation and every technique I can to keep you listening. That just seems like more work than it's actually worth. Okay, maybe the podcast would be more successful if I played those little games, but I refuse to participate in your reindeer games. I don't want to. All right, so here we go. I have here in front of me. You know what I have here in front of me. Some of you may know what I have here in front of me. Some of you may have no clue. I have here in front of me the famous book, The Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis. We have been studying the book, The Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis, for well over a year. We have made it to chapter 25 and what is known as Book 1. This is the last chapter in Book 1. The Imitation of Christ is broken down into basically 4 books. We are about to finish Book 1, which is chapter 25, and then we will start the second book, which is called Admonitions Pertaining to Inward Things. So when we get to the book 2, we're going to be looking at admonitions pertaining to inward things. But right now we're in the last chapter of Book 1, and this is going to be somewhat of a difficult chapter because I have to try to. There's a couple of things I have to try to do here. First, I have to try to understand and try to interpret what I think Thomas à Kempis is saying. All right, what Thomas à Kempis is saying to me goes against my theological perspective completely, and so it's going to be. This could turn into is this a test or a challenge between two theological perspectives? Maybe. I think there is definitely going to be a challenge of perspectives in this, and I think it's going to be somewhat interesting. Now, let's remind ourselves. Obviously, Thomas à Kempis was a Catholic monk when he wrote this book. Why are we looking at a book written by a Catholic monk? Because this book, whether you like it or not, has been massively influential in the Protestant world. I've told the story before. I was introduced to this book at an independent fundamental Baptist church. I don't think they had any idea this was written by a Catholic monk. So the book is greatly influential in the Protestant world. It's greatly influential in church history. So we're going to look at it. Yes, when the Catholicism shows itself, I'm definitely going to point that out, and we're going to speak against it. And I think here we may have a little bit of Catholicism that shows itself, and it's going to be basically, I want you to hear this. I think what we're getting ready to possibly find is we're going to contrast maybe the Catholic understanding of salvation versus, not all Protestants. I I'm going to say the biblical view of salvation. I'm going to offend some Protestants, but that's okay. All right. Because I think some Protestants have a wrong understanding of it as well. So I think this should be very interesting, and hopefully this will be very beneficial. All right. So if you have a copy of The Imitation of Christ, turn to chapter 25, book 1. Let's get ready to study. Let's get ready to put on our thinking caps. I don't know how much we're going to actually get into the text, because I think we're going to, I'm going to present some ideas before we get even into the text. This is where we may do a major detour from the text, but I think there's a lot to talk about. All right. Let's start with the title. The title that my edition of the book has. All right. Now, not all the books have the same titles for each chapter. Some of them don't even have chapter titles. Some of them just immediately start with the text. But this edition that I have, my version, my copy, each chapter has a title. In this particular case, I think it's very important to try to understand what Thomas à Kempis wants us to consider here. My title is this: Zealous Amendments of Life. Zealous Amendments of Life. Now, when I saw the title, I immediately stopped and go, okay, those are two important words: zealous and amendments. Let's start with defining the word zealous, because I think the definitions here are very important. Zealous. Now, this comes from Merriam-Webster. Zealous, marked by fervent partisanship for a person, a cause, or an ideal, filled with or characterized by zeal. So to be zealous of something is to be marked by a fervent partisanship for a person, cause, or an ideal. You are committed to it. You have a zealous passion for it. You are committed and dedicated to that cause, to that ideal, to that person, to that thing. You are zealous for it. That person is zealous for, you name the television show. I mean, they're going to be there. They're going to watch every episode. They're zealous about it. All right. So here, Thomas à Kempis wants us to consider this idea of being zealous, having this fervency when it comes to making amendments to our lives. Now, let's look at the word amendment. Amendment is the process of altering or amending a law or document. Okay, we understand that. It's a process of altering or amending a law or document. Clearly, Thomas à Kempis doesn't want us to be zealous here about amending or altering a document. What he wants to do is he wants us to be zealous about amending or altering our lives. Another definition here for Merriam-Webster under amendment is the act of amending something, correction. Correction. So the idea is he wants you and I to be zealous and amending or correcting our lives, making alterations, or how is it? Altering or amending our lives. That we need to have a zeal for amending, altering, and correcting our lives. Now, I want you to think of the Christian life. Before we even get into the text, I want you to think of 3 aspects to your Christian life. All right. I want you to write these down. I always teach in a way that I don't want you passively listening. I like you actively participating. So I want you to think of 3 areas of your life. All right. Number 1, the area of knowledge. As a Christian, we are to grow in our knowledge. We are to grow in our understanding. We are to grow in our understanding of Scripture and our understanding of God. We need to know doctrine. We need to know theology. We need to know the Word of God. We need to know church history. There is this aspect of the Christian life of growing in knowledge. This requires study. This requires work. This requires listening. This maybe requires memorization. There is a major aspect of your Christian life that should be there should be a major segment of your Christian life. There should be a major focus in your Christian life on learning, growing in your understanding, growing in your knowledge. Right? So there's the learning. I think we can all agree that it's one thing to learn, but that learning should lead to doing. Learning, doing. Faith without works is dead, as we talk about in the book of James talks about, and we discuss obviously within the Christian world over and over. The Bible, all of that learning should lead to doing, seeking out to obey, seeking out to move forward. But there is a third part of the Christian life. So there is learning. Okay, we'll call it learning. We could say knowing, but learning. I think we'll call it learning. I think that's better. Learning, doing, and then number 3, correcting, or as Thomas à Kempis refers to it, amending, altering, making changes, making corrections. Again, the word he uses is altering or amending. Altering and amending a document. That's an amendment. We need to alter and make amendments and changes to our lives. So there is the learning part, or the knowing part. I think I referred to the knowing, but let's call it learning. Okay, now that I'm thinking, I like that better. Learning, doing, and correcting. Learning, doing, amending. Now, I want you to take that and look at just think about your daily life. How much of your time is dedicated to learning as a Christian? How much time is dedicated to learning? How much time is dedicated to actually doing and putting into practice what you're learning? And then how much of your Christian life is dedicated to altering, amending, and correcting? Now, this would require first examining your life, seeing what needs to be changed, which would require the learning, and then putting something into practice to alter, to amend, and to change so that what you are today will not be what you are tomorrow. Where's the emphasis in your life? The learning, the doing, or the amending, the correcting? Now, I believe that we learn a lot of things. I think that we determine about what kind of things we want to do. And I don't know how much actual altering, correcting, and amending happens in the daily life of a Christian. Now, you would think the learning and the doing would lead to the amending, but I don't know if it always does. So learning, doing, amending, correcting. Thomas à Kempis wants us to be zealous, wants us to be passionate, wants, in a sense, to have a partisanship in regards to changing and amending our lives. Now, within the Catholic system, you have the idea of venial and mortal sin. You have, obviously, the major consequences of committing a mortal sin. You're no longer in a state of grace. You also have within the Catholic Church the idea of going to confession, confessing those areas where you're messing up. You also have the idea of doing penance and doing something to, in a sense, make it right, all right? So you have some of these concepts there, but let's make it very, very important. Within Catholicism, I think this is fair. Within Catholicism, you can take the learning, you can take the doing, and you can take the amending, or the correcting. But within Catholicism, if certain things are not done the correct way and the right way, you're not just talking about not growing in your Christian life. You're talking about no longer being in a state of grace. You're talking about dying not in a state of grace. You don't go to purgatory, you go to hell. In other words, within Catholicism, while you're trying to learn, what you're trying to do, and what you're trying to amend, you do not have eternal security. You don't have that security. You don't have security. You're doing the learning, the doing, and the amending in order to make sure that you're going to die and get to purgatory. Not even really trying to get to heaven. You're just trying to die in a state of grace to get to purgatory. If you really look at Catholicism, you're being open and honest with the truth and with what it's teaching. So here's a question. Does a system, and you can either be Catholicism or any form of Protestantism that teaches you can lose your salvation, does the doctrine of that you lose your salvation produce Christians who do more learning, doing, and amending than Christians who believe in eternal security? I will argue, I've known Christians who believe you can lose your salvation, but they always believe it's someone else who can lose their salvation. They rarely ever think they're in danger of it. They always like, look at them. Like, oh, they were saved. They lost their salvation. And it's never them. They always seem to be imperfectly, they're to me, in many cases, they're no more godly. They're no more fervent. They're no more passionate than the people who believe in eternal security, because for some reason they think they're okay. I've known plenty of Catholics who seem to think that they're okay. Like they don't seem worried. It's like, wait a minute, I think you've committed a mortal sin. They don't seem bothered or concerned, even though they are a part of a church that teaches that they can literally die. They can lose the state of grace that they are in, and they can completely lose that and never even make it to purgatory. You think they would be motivated. You think they would be at every mass. You think they would be at the confession booth every time it was open. You figure they would be completely committed to doing penance. So I don't know which one motivates more. We all, look, it's a fact. We need to learn, we need to do, and we need to amend. But what motivates that more? Believing you can lose your salvation or believing in eternal security? I think a lot of times when it comes to the doctrines of eternal security or losing your salvation or the doctrine of hell, I think in many cases, those are we almost treat those as very theoretical ideas that doesn't have a lot of practical impact on our Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We may say we believe in hell, but if any one of our loved ones die, we magically find some way to convince ourselves that they are converted and they're in heaven. I mean, I think the only people who go to hell are, really, 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 really bad people, because everyone else, we find a way to get them into heaven. We don't seem too bothered that hell exists. And then I think a lot of people who believe you can lose your salvation, it never really has any practical implications on their life, because they don't ever seem to fear that they're in danger of losing it. So exactly how does this work? Well, let's see what Thomas Kempis, and you'll see why I'm bringing up some of these issues, all right? So zealous amendments of life. Again, 3 areas of your Christian life I really want you to contemplate: the learning, the doing, and the amending. I really want you to just spend some time, talking to someone, talking about your Christian life. I do a lot of learning. I don't know how much actual doing I'm doing. And I don't know if I've ever spent real much time about thinking about what do I need to amend and what do I need to change. I want you to consider them. All right, now let's see what Thomas à Kempis does here. We'll see if we can get through one paragraph, all right? He tells us to do this: be watchful and diligent in the service of God. Be watchful and diligent in the service of God. Now, he's got 2 Timothy, well, at least my copy of the book has 2 Timothy 4:5 here. I don't know if I'm going to look up every one of these scriptures, but we'll look at this one. 2 Timothy 4:5. 2 Timothy 4:5. Be watchful, but watch thou in all things, endure afflictions, do the work of an evangelist, make full proof of thy ministry. Now, of course, Thomas Kempis just rips the verses out of context here. Actually, when this was written, it would have been written for, I guess, the people in the monastery. So it would be written for people, because 2 Timothy there is kind of doing more focusing on those in ministry. So I guess it would have some connotation there. But he wants us to be watchful and diligent in the service of God. Okay? Be fervent to go forward, for shortly you shall receive the reward of your labors. There shall not then be any fear or sorrow in your coasts. Labor now but a little, and you shall find great rest, yea, perpetual joy. So it's an encouragement. Hey, we need to work now. We need to be fervent in our work and our labor now for God. We need to do that now, and then there will be a reward. Now, you could say that this is sliding over maybe into kind of a works-based idea, or you could just argue that what's being taught is the idea that as Christians, we need to do what we can, and that there will be a judgment where we receive rewards. Now, we can get into a whole discussion about different judgments, and if people believe that or reject that. All right, let's see what he says here. If you continue faithful and fervent in doing good, no doubt God will be faithful and liberal in rewarding you. Now, look what he says here. You ought to have a good hope that you will come to the palm of victory, but you must not be secure lest you wax either slothful or proud. Now that is what caught my attention. All right. He's encouraging us to be zealous, not even in amending our life right here, but in work and labor, working and labor, knowing that we're going to be rewarded for it. So we need to be passionate and do so. And then there's almost a warning here. You must not be secure lest you wax either slothful or proud. Thomas à Kempis seems to give the idea that if you feel secure, that security leads to slothfulness and pridefulness. Now, this is very, very, very important. I want you to put your thinking caps on here. If a doctrine leads to something negative like slothfulness and arrogance, that doesn't mean the doctrine is false. See, sometimes what we'll do is, well, that doctrine could lead to this bad stuff. If a doctrine leads some people to something bad, that does not prove the doctrine is either bad or good. It just means that that's what someone did with the doctrine. Something can be true, and someone can take a truth and do something wrong with the truth. Because sometimes a truth can be dangerous. Truth can be dangerous, but and someone may mishandle the truth, misuse the truth, and do something incorrect to the truth. It doesn't change whether something is true. All right? I cannot stress this enough, because so many times people will say, well, look, if you believe in the eternal security of the believer, people are going to just do whatever they want to do. They're going to just do whatever they want to do. So their argument against the truthfulness of a doctrine is what people may or may not do with a doctrine. That's not how we determine the truth of a doctrine. We determine the truth of a doctrine is whether it's taught in God's word. But Thomas à Kempis is seeming to argue that if someone has security, they're going to get slothful and they're going to get proud. Now, let's ask ourselves. This is a very important question. All right. You are a Christian, and you believe, hopefully as I do, that my salvation is only determined by the finished work of Jesus Christ. The reason I am saved is because I put my faith in Jesus Christ, and I stand before God perfectly righteous and holy because the imputed righteousness of Christ is accredited to my account. So I am declared perfectly righteous, perfectly holy, perfectly obedient. All the obedience of Christ, passive and active, is given to me. It's accredited to my account. So I stand before God in my position, perfectly righteous, perfectly holy, perfectly obedient, without sin. That's how I stand before God in my position. In practice, I'm still a sinner. The things I want to do, I don't do. The things I don't want to do, I end up doing. I fall, I mess up, I make a mistake, all kinds of things. But my salvation is not based off what I do. It's based off what Christ did. So I am eternally secure, because the only way to not be eternally secure is to remove the imputed righteousness of Christ from my life. You would have to somehow be able to pry that imputed righteousness away out of my account. You would have to withdraw it from my account, but you don't have the power to do that because it's God who declared me to be righteous by faith. You can't. You can yell at me and say, you did these 17 things, you're a mess, you're garbage. From a human perspective, I may be mess and I may be a garbage, but from the perspective of God, I'm covered in the righteousness of Jesus Christ. Now the question is, that eternal security, does that make me slothful and proud? Now, I don't know how it could make me prideful, because it's not my righteousness. It's his righteousness. Now, to be fair, I think sometimes we start walking around and we become arrogant, thinking we're better than everyone else. We need to remember we're nothing but condemned sinners. We are nothing more than beggars. We are absolute sinners, and the only reason we can even stand up and try to act like we're anything is because of the imputed righteousness of Christ. But we need to always look in the mirror and realize what's really there. Behind that imputed righteousness is real sin and real failure and real mistakes. But even if eternal security leads to slothfulness and pride, we need to condemn the slothfulness. We need to condemn the pride, but that doesn't mean we throw out the doctrine, because I will argue there are plenty within Catholicism who don't believe in eternal security, believe you can commit a sin and no longer be in a state of grace, and then maybe get to purgatory, all the different things that Catholicism teaches. I've met Catholics who are just as slothful and just as prideful as Protestants. Now, is there a danger from believing in eternal security? I believe there may be a danger, and we need to look at that danger, but that doesn't disprove the doctrine. I just think it's interesting. The exact quote here is, "You must not be secure lest you either wax slothful or proud." Secure in what? That would have to be secure in your salvation. I don't know what else it would refer to. He goes on to say this, when one who was in anxiety of mind, often wavering between fear and hope, did once, being overcome with grief, prostrate himself in a church before a certain altar and prayer. Okay, all right, so here we go. He's going to tell a story here. I was going to break this down and kind of do different things with it. I'm going to let him tell the whole story, all right? So I'm going to let him tell the whole story, and then we'll try to take it apart. All right, here we go, right? When one who was in anxiety of mind, often wavering between fear and hope, did once, being overcome with grief, prostrate himself in a church before a certain altar in prayer, and pondered thus within himself, saying, "Oh, if I knew that I should yet preserve." All right? Not preserve, I'm sorry. Persevere. The way this is written, it's broken down. All right, so persevere. So let's read this again. All right, make sure we get this right. This, because he's going to give an illustration here, and my mind is already running ahead because I want to break this down, but I've got to let Thomas à Kempis do it his way. Right? So I know Thomas à Kempis is not alive. I'm sorry that I'm messing up your book, but there's a part of me that just wants to ignore his story, but let's go through the story. So here we go. When one who was in anxiety of mind, so here's an individual, their mind is filled with anxiety. They're worried, they're concerned. They kept wavering between fear and hope. They would have hope, and next thing you know, they'd be fearful. They'd be scared. They were overcome with grief. So they went into a church, prostrated themselves before a certain altar in prayer, and they pondered with themselves. While they're laying there before the altar, laying on their face before an altar, they're thinking to themselves, oh, if I knew that I should yet persevere. He presently heard within him a divine answer. So here's what he does. He's laying there. He's like, if only I knew I was going to persevere. If only if I knew I was going to make it to the end. Now, this is really the idea to me of, losing your salvation. This seems very works-based, which again would reflect the Catholicism. This person's laying there. If only I knew. Am I really going to make it to the end? If I knew that. It's almost the idea. If I knew that, then things would be better. But supposedly, according to Thomas à Kempis' story, this person receives a divine answer, and please note, it's in quotations. Here's his divine answer. So supposedly this is God giving this person this answer. If you did know this, what would you do? So supposedly the divine answer is this. If you did know you were going to persevere, if you did know you were going to make it to the end, what would you do? And then it says this, do now what you would do then, and you shall be perfectly secure. So if you knew you were secure and you were going to do certain things, well, do that, and then you will be perfectly secure. Again, this is making the security based off what we do, which I completely reject. My security is not what I do, it's what in Christ did. Now, because I'm perfectly secure in what Christ did, the danger is, does that make me slothful and proud? Does that make me lazy? Gratitude should motivate us. I think we do more being motivated by gratitude than motivated by fear. I think there's truth to that. And then that continues, and being therewith comforted and strengthened, he committed himself wholly to the divine will, and that anxious tossing ceased. So supposedly this answer was like, okay, wow, that's a great answer. If I'll just act like I'm eternally secure, and then I'll do what I would do if I knew I was eternally secure, and then he committed himself completely to the divine will, and all of anxiety went away. All of his anxiety went away. And it goes on to say, and he willed not to search curiously to know what things should befall him, but rather labored to seek out what was the acceptable and perfect will of God for the beginning and the accomplishing of every good work. So it seems like the person, all the anxiety went away, stopped worrying about whether he was going to make it to the end, what things were going to happen, and he just started searching for the things that were according to God's will. Now, let me go through this again. Three things we need to learn, we need to do, and we need to amend our lives. Now, here's the question. What should be the thing that motivates you to learn and to do and to amend? What should be the thing that motivates you to learn, to do, and change your Christian life? Should it be fear that you're going to end up in purgatory? Is it fear that you're going to end up in hell? Is it fear that you may not be saved? Is it fear that you've got to prove your salvation? Is it fear that some Protestant pastor gave you a test saying these are the 10 things that prove you're saved, and you realize that you only got 4 of them right and the rest of them you don't, so now you don't know if you're saved? Is it constant fear that you don't know if you're saved? Is that the thing that's going to motivate you to learn and to do and to amend your life? I think it may be, it's a temporary boost, right? Think of it this way. I think fear of hell, fear of purgatory, fear of not necessarily being saved, constant worry that you're not saved, I think is like a 5-hour energy. It may give you, energy for 5 hours. It may give you that boost, but it's going to wear off. It's going to wear off because at some point you're going to become weary. You're going to become tired. You're going to become discouraged. You're going to become despondent. And you're going to start thinking, this is never going to work, because you know what you're going to discover? I don't care how much fear is heaped upon you. I don't care if they tell you you're not saved, that you can live in constant fear that you're going to slide into the pit of hell. At some point, you're going to be like, you know what? Forget it. I'm never going to be able to do it. Because you know what you're going to discover every time you turn around? Is that you're a sinner, and that you're a sinner, and that you're a sinner. And I don't care how much you commit yourself to God's perfect will today, tomorrow, you're going to find in some way, shape, or form, you're going to try to push your will to the forefront. You're going to want the preeminence. You're going to want to be exalted. You're going to want things your way, and you're going to be unloving to someone. You're going to be selfish. You're going to gossip against someone. You're going to over and over and over. Sin is the reality of your life. And if you constantly fear that you're not saved, it may motivate you at first. It's almost like you may start the Christian life motivated by fear of not being saved or losing your salvation, or, you got to pass some test to prove to, I don't know, whoever gave the test, whether it's MacArthur, Jonathan Edwards, whomever. Okay, I got to prove because, if I don't do this and this and this, I'm not really saved. You can have all of those tests, and you may take off from the starting line, and you may, gone, man. I mean, you're like 15 miles ahead of everyone else. You're more godly. You're doing this. You're learning. You're doing. You're amending. I mean, you're so far gone. Everybody's like, man, that person they took off on their Christian race and they left me behind. But you just stay slow and steady. And guess what you're going to find, I believe, 15 miles up the road? You're going to find that person sitting next to the road, bothered, discouraged, frustrated. Because if they're being honest, they're going to realize, I just keep sinning and I keep sinning and I don't know if I've done enough. They're going to just burn themselves out. Or they're going to keep running thinking that they're better. They're going to pretend that they're better. They're going to have to put on a mask. They're going to have to do a lot of pretending that they're more godly and ignoring smaller sins. Their venial sins they'll just ignore, thinking, look, I've not committed that big sin. I've not committed a big sin. And in many cases, they will become like Pharisees and arrogant and proud. Here's the thing. While that person may find themselves on the side of the road, burnt out, broken, discouraged, despondent, frustrated, you just keep walking in this. My salvation is not based off of what I do. It's based off what Christ did. I am covered in the perfect righteousness of Jesus Christ. I stand before God as righteous and holy and obedient without sin. That's what keeps me going. Because of gratitude and because of love, I'm going to keep trying to live out my Christian life. But that should keep you going, because you're going to fall and you're going to fail. Now, you need to still have zeal for learning. You need to have a zeal for doing. You need to have a zeal for amending, but that zeal doesn't come because of fear. It doesn't become of anxiety. It should arise because you know you're perfectly secure and you know what Christ did for you. A never-ending source of gratitude and gratefulness to the one who saved you, even though you were undeserving, and keeps you saved, even though you're undeserving. It's almost like what Thomas à Kempis is saying. Just, okay, look, you may not truly be secure, but just pretend that you are secure and then do what you would do if you were secure. And then that will make you secure. It's all about finding a way to make you secure. So I have some disagreements here with Thomas à Kempis on this. I do like this idea that we need to have zeal and amending our lives. But I think we need to have zeal in learning. I think we need to have zeal in doing. And I think we need to have zeal in learning. And I think we need to consider what will motivate that. So let me ask you a question. If you're listening to me and you believe you can lose your salvation, do you believe losing your salvation motivates you more than someone like me who believes that my salvation is dependent upon the finished work of Jesus Christ? All right. So I think you need to ask yourself that question. I think we need to ask. Here's another thing I think we need to ask is whatever you believe about salvation, believe you can lose it or believe it's eternally secure. What is it doing for you in your practical everyday life? What is that truth doing to you every day? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. What is it actually doing? And then I just want you to realize something. Someone's misuse of a doctrine, someone's abuse of a doctrine, someone taking the doctrine and doing something incorrectly does not prove the doctrine is incorrect. This was Pelagius's problem. If you go back in church history, Pelagius felt that Christianity had become weak and that everyone was making an excuse that the reason they sinned is because they were totally depraved sinners, and he was tired of this weak Christianity. So the doctrine of Pelagianism was created that, no, you don't have a sinful nature. No, you're not bound in sin. No, your will is completely free. And he wanted to create this idea that, stop making all of this excuses. Were Pelagians any more godly than they're quote unquote, I mean, it's not fair to call them Calvinists because Calvin is nowhere close to living at that time. But to the Augustinians, let's do it that way. We'll say Calvinists for the people to understand. For those who believe in total depravity, were Pelagians more godly because they didn't believe in total depravity versus those who believed in total depravity? No. I've known charismatics who believe you can lose your salvation. They're no more godly than the Southern Baptist who believes in once saved, always saved, using that term instead of perseverance of the saints. And I've known people who believe in lordship salvation the way MacArthur teaches it, believing, okay, if I'm truly saved, then I'm going to do this. Here's my test to know that I'm saved. They're no more godly than the person who believes in once saved, always saved, or easy believism or free grace, depending on whatever theological label you want to give it. Because you know what we are? We're all sinners. And guess what's going to be proven? And no matter what your theological belief system is, you know what's going to be found over and over and over? Sin, selfishness, spiritual apathy, spiritual complacency, okay? Greed, hatred, you just name everything. It's going to demonstrate itself. All right, we'll stop right there. It'll be interesting to see how people respond to this one. I told you it's just a hard chapter to know exactly what Thomas à Kempis is trying to say. I hope I'm interpreting it right, but based off his Catholicism and him basically kind of arguing against this idea of security, it has to be this idea that you're not secure. Has to be in your salvation. So, but we'll finish up the chapter and we'll see what kind of conversation this sparks. You can email me, newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com. I'm going to stop because I am literally, physically starving to death, okay? I am. It's been great to partake on doctrine, theology, the Bible. It's been great to have some spiritual food, but if I don't get some physical food, I'm going to fall on the floor, okay? Yeah, I'm starting to get that shaky. My stomach is starting to growl, and I'm like, I need some food here quickly. So I'm going to go do that. All right. So everyone have a great day. email me whenever, newsif@yahoo.com. Hopefully something we did today was beneficial. 3 live broadcasts today. Tomorrow we'll have 3 live broadcasts, Sunday school, Sunday morning, Sunday night. Then I won't be back till Tuesday. But hopefully till then, I look forward to hearing from you. Everyone have a great day. God bless.